The good news is, if we draw from photos, we don't need to worry about this perspective theory at all to really nail perspective in our drawings. Because in reality, we're going to be drawing whatever perspective is in our scene from our observation. Here is a really quick, easy, and very effective way to work on, to improve, to see results on our perspective drawing skills. I'm going to demonstrate how to do the exercise with 3 different examples. But it relies on the fact that with perspective, the important thing when we draw from a reference, and that would include a scene in front of us, we observe the angles accurately. We observe this angle accurately. We observe this angle accurately. We observe this angle accurately. So here's a great exercise to work on improving our observation skills so that our perspective angles easily fall into place without having to worry about where are the vanishing points and what happens when they don't fit on the paper and where do they go and I don't know. And this exercise lets us focus on these actual skills we need to draw an accurate streetscape every time. This drawing exercise relies on just drawing the minimum we need to draw to work on practicing our perspective angles so we don't get distracted with the details. We're really drawing box-like structures, perhaps with minimal details, so that we can work on the angles and our observation on those. And that lets us, if you like, tackle all of the perspective challenges on a subject in 5 or 6 minutes. Now that's a great way to really hone that particular skill. And in a sense, if we've got the angles wrong, well, we probably don't really need to be spending time putting these details on something that has an underlying problem as it is. So this also lets me practice my proportions, my estimating heights and so forth. And I really recommend that you work at doing your practice exercises the same size as your reference, because that lets us check very easily how accurate we've been at the end. And I'll show you in these 3 exercises how I do that. But just starting with the simplest, most box-like form, and I thought when I looked at this, I think I've taken it too far to the right. And so I just moved it in slightly. And now I'm just finding the center point to put this gabled end on and working out how high to make it in relation to all of this. And now I'm going to show you how I check this afterwards. Now you're watching this at double time, so it took me twice as long to do. But this way I just focus on those skills and you can see what I've done. And now I can see, has my estimation on the widths been accurate? And well, my first estimation was actually more accurate. And that's helpful to know. And now I can do the heights as well as the widths. So let's move on to a slightly more complex, more challenging object to practice on in our second example. With this second example, I'm going to add more details. I'm not actually going to add the details, but I'm going to add some simplified lines to indicate those details to help me work out and then to check my estimation of horizontal distances as we move along, as well as checking the angle. So I'm really breaking this house down to its bare bones to work out and to practice my skills in getting the basics correct. And you'll see how I measure the angle. I put a dot. I check with the dot by using my pen. Sometimes I'll do, if you like, a practice run of the line using my pen over the reference, get some muscle memory. And then there's also a lot of just observation. Now, because this is double speed, it's making me look as though I'm perhaps rushing a little bit more than I am. So I really suggest you use the cog icon to slow this video down to half speed, or at least parts of it. And that will give you a sense of what my actual drawing speed is for these exercises. So now I'm just worked out where might the door go because that's going to help me move across accurately. And then I'm also going to put lines to indicate the veranda supports. And that will help me work out where the end of the building is going to be. And I do it by looking not along the diagonal of the perspective angles, but by looking horizontally in a straight line across from one vertical element to the next. And so all of these angles I'm looking at, I'm estimating, I'm cross-checking my estimation with the reference, and I'm not getting bogged down in drawing the details of the windows, of the fences, of getting my angles exact, but I'm just working on the bare bones. And then I'm going to use my strip of scrap paper to check how accurate have my estimations from observation been. I'm not using a ruler here anywhere. I'm doing it by eyeballing it and then doing a freehand line. And if I got that position correctly, the angle should look correct. So now I'm going to use this scrap of paper. I'm going to measure from the corner and just see where those posts and the front door is. And when I position it correctly, it's looking okay. I've taken my building just slightly too far. That final horizontal width at the end of the veranda was just a fraction, a few millimeters too high, too wide. And now I check the verticals and they're looking okay too. This third example exercise is similar to the last one, but it's more challenging because the angles are more extreme. We're very low down looking up. But I'm following those same principles. I'm observing carefully, and then I'm estimating the heights and the widths, trying to get them actual size as my reference so that I can check my accuracy easily and quickly at the end. And then particularly working on my angles. I'm not worried about the detail. I'm not worried about trying to create the effect of the rounded edges or the surface of the stonework or the stone blocks or the details of the windows. Instead, I'm really working at estimating the angles and then checking my estimations, and if they're not quite right, I'm adjusting where that dot is, make it a bit lower in this case. Now I check that angle, and is that right? And now I start to get a feel for, do my angles tend to be too high or too low? I can also get a feel, do I tend to go too far along in estimating the horizontal widths of my vertical elements, such as these veranda posts, or not? Because whatever my natural error is, I'll make it all the time. And therefore, because I practice it and see it time after time after time after time, quickly doing these fast 5-6 minute exercises, that means I can then consciously work on it. I can know, hang on, look, it's probably a little bit less. Let me just see. And I can make adjustments, and I can now adjust my default estimation to become more accurate than it was. And that's the advantage of when we just work on the one skill. We can improve it very quickly because we concentrate just on the one thing in our drawing session that we really need to improve on, rather than doing all of the other elements of this scene, finishing the roof, getting all the guttering done and the stonework and the details. And so now I'm just doing this wall on the left hand side as well, another really strong angle to get. Yep, a little bit further down. And now I have to estimate that width, and there is the ground level. And so this is enough now for me to check how accurate have I been in these estimations. And that's better. Phew, I was worried for a second. And that's worked out pretty well in this case for me. And let me check the angle. You see, we can slide our piece of paper across and we can see how accurate have we got those angles placed by our observation. This one could have been a little bit steeper, I think. But now I know very quickly. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. this drawing exercise is a really fast and simple way to really improve our perspective skills when we draw. We just focus on the actual skills it's so important to improve on. But whatever you draw and however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.